Okay, video for pedals, calibrating, tuning, and adjusting for different cars. If you load up iRacing and you're not planning to do any of this stuff, but you see this forced calibration box, then don't go through the process right away, back out of it, and turn the sim off. Check all the connections and everything's plugged in, everything's switched to on. Because sometimes if a device has an issue starting up or it's switched off, the order of all the address ports that each device gets assigned is altered. And iRacing, if it doesn't see your pedals or your steering or your shifters or something like that in the usual address position, then it wants you to do a whole calibration again. And then if a device you had was disconnected and you reconnected it, the order gets shuffled again and iRacing wants to calibrate again. So back out, check everything first, do a restart. Sometimes just do a restart anyway, just because sometimes the device doesn't really calibrate properly when it turns on, or it isn't detected properly when it turns on. So sometimes and quite often a restart fixes everything before you go into any sort of calibration and change things around. Now this guide is going to be relative to the Ultimate Pedal Plus, and they look like this. You've got the black polymers, and you have black springs, and you have these bigger disc spaces between each polymer. If your pedals don't look like that, then you just have the Ultimate pedals. They're the older version. It's the same pedal, but it just doesn't have the upgrade. So contact me and we can arrange to get the upgrade, which is like €100. And it comes with a new USB box, which is what then enables the software, the tuning software that we can now use to work. So if you are calibrating and you want to adjust your pedals, then the step you want to do is not calibrate right now in iRacing, so back out of that. Instead, you want to open Smart Control first, and if you don't see it in your menu here, type Smart Control in the top, and you should see it. If you don't see it, then open up File Explorer, look in your desktop, and then look in important files. Scroll down until you see a Smart Control folder. Open it there. If there's no Smart Control folder in your desktop, check your Downloads folder. But otherwise, just go to the Husingfeld website, husingfeld.com, click on Support, Smart Control Live. That's a new name for the suite. We actually don't need the Live. The Live just kind of puts you into kind of like a forum of everybody's settings, everybody's suggestions. We're not looking for that. We really just want to do a couple of simple things with the tuning. So scroll down to download, click on the link, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this Smart Control Live page, you'll see the legacy Smart Control software. It's the older version. It just doesn't have this live function. Click that. You should see it start to download. Open that file in your download folder, unzip it, and you should see the Smart Control program. If you do see it, like for instance, I'll take you through the steps right here. If you see the Smart Control program, obviously you're going to have to go to Downloads and right click here and extract it and then open it, because then when you can see the H logo here, you can right click it and you can select Pin to Start. Pin to Start is this start menu here, and it will appear, and then you can access it again and again and again. So when you open your Smart Control program, the first thing you want to do before you calibrate the controls in iRacing is you want to check that your pedal input 100% input equals 100% output for your clutch, brake, and throttle. So my brake is at 75 right now. We'll come back to that. Set it to 100. Right, click on the Save Active Profile to Pedals EEPROM button a few times. And this just so that now when we calibrate the pedals, we can show the pedals the full range of the motion. That's important because we're going to essentially tune or manipulate that later. So now you can go ahead and show your full throttle to iRacing, and make sure this raw value goes up to 4095 for all pedals. Don't worry about tuning anything right now or setting it to feel. We're not trying to achieve that right here. We can do that with the software later. Make sure this drop-down menu is set to calibrate to detect clutch. And then we're done with the iRacing calibration of our pedals, so we don't need that menu anymore. So when we come back to the program now we've got the choice. Are you trying to set a brake pedal for a non-ABS car or for an ABS car? Because the output, the max output will differ. Obviously, if you've got a non-ABS car, like a prototype, a Formula One car, an Indy car, you need to be able to reach 100% brake effort, especially for downforce cars, obviously, because we need to be able to get max braking right away. If you're celebrating, if you're setting calibrating for a ABS car, then in iRacing, they don't typically simulate an ABS car's braking very well. I.e., if you brake too hard in an iRacing ABS car, you're still going to get some lockups. You're still going to get thermal degradation in the tires, and you probably notice a lap into your session when the tire pressures are coming up, the car stops really well at max braking. And then as laps go on, it just starts getting worse and worse, and you start to spin, you start to miss apexes, and it's because it's allowing you to still get some lockups, and it's allowing the tire temp to get really too high. It's kind of a downside to iRacing, but I think they do it because of competition reasons. You know, they just don't want braking to be that straightforward. But in real racing, in real GT3 cars and GT4 cars, they're generally all using a Bosch Motorsport ABS system or another Motorsport ABS system. And the way to use that brake pedal is to just hit that brake pedal and push it all the way down through the floor as hard as you can. In real life, you'll be braking so hard you'll have ABS lights coming onto your dash, you'll have lockup lights coming onto your dash, and even at that level of braking, you'll probably review the data later compared to a teammate and see that a teammate can still be braking 20% harder than you and stopping better than you. And so the habits you have to learn for racing ABS is just push that pedal as hard as you can. And obviously, since that doesn't work in iRacing, because we'll get thermal degradation and things like that, we want to limit our output of brake pressure that iRacing will see. So we're still going to push 100% on the brake pedal, but typically in my experience, GT3 cars in iRacing, they'll start to lock up somewhere between 72 and 80% depending on the car. For me, the 911 GT3R, the 991, typically just stays below locking up if you set your max output to 72, and the Ferrari maybe 75, the BMW maybe 80. Sometimes it can differ slightly by 1 or 2% depending on the track temperature, things like that. But basically, we want to be able to brake at 100% if we're practicing for real motorsport ABS, and we don't want iRacing to lock up, so we want to be just below that threshold of lockup. And you can use this to practice for your real car, but also it just benefits us to do this for any simulator racing with ABS cars, because we want to be able to use the brake as it would be used in real life, and we don't want to deal with lockups anyway. We're driving an ABS car, right? So some people might consider this a cheat or an advantage, but ultimately that's how the real car is in real life. So, you know, why should the software hold us back from that? So set the number you want, and then whenever you've changed anything in Smart Control, always click this button in the bottom right corner a couple times, just because when you do click it, it doesn't really acknowledge that you've clicked it. So I just do it twice. And then if you check in options, you can now see that when you push that brake pedal all the way down, iRacing has already been updated by pushing that EEPROM button, and now we can't brake past 75%. If you then drive the car, the ABS car, and you know within a lap or two it's still consistently getting some lockups, then just go back to Smart Control and lower this number. And if it's not locking up and you want to hear just a little bit of tire noise just to confirm that you're right on the threshold, raise it up a little bit and then click save on the EEPROM again, and then go try it. Basically all we're trying to do here is mitigate what is kind of a weakness or an inadequacy of iRacing in that sense, just reproducing what an ABS race car really brakes like. Another tweak that you can do to improve the realism, especially if you're racing in real life. If you're racing in real life with ABS in GT4 or GT3, you're probably just not in the habit of how hard you've got to push that brake pedal. And so one thing you can do with the sim to train your leg, especially if you're learning left foot braking and your left foot's just kind of dumb for braking, because they all are if you're used to using your right foot. Your brain has all the pathways for, you know, having good dexterity and feel with your right foot, but it doesn't have that in the left foot unless we practice it. Well, we can do that on the sim. So one thing you can do now that we've limited our output, so we're not going to get lockups, but we want to train our leg to be stronger. You can raise the max force in kilograms here. Just take that number up. I think the Ultimates claim that they can go, you know, above like, I don't know, 115, 120 kilograms. I'm not sure. That kind of level's really high. You're probably going to start walking funny after a week of that. But typically what I found is if you're trying to simulate a real world brake pedal, Ferrari Challenge for me is about 60, 65 kilogram. It's really not a heavy brake pedal. It's got quite a bit of boosting still on those brakes. Then a GT4, GT3, it's going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. But, you know, if you're really training your leg to be strong, I would put it at 80 kilograms, 85, 90, and then click save. And then you can confirm here when you push the brake pedal, it really doesn't go as high and you got to really push it. And now if you drive like that, you know, you're only going to get effective max brake pressure below the ABS lockup or below the lockup threshold. You're only going to get that max pressure if you're really pushing the pedal hard. And that's going to train you over time and your brain to tell your leg, whichever you brake with, to, you know, push harder. And then hopefully when you get in the real car, it's not as much work. If you're not practicing for that kind of brake pressure or you need it lower, just go lower. You know, I think the amount of time you drive on a simulator versus real life is a lot more. And so, you know, you can go easy on yourself a little bit. Same with steering force, really. You know, I've had bouts of tennis elbow because I drive so much on the sim and I have the force feedback high. So I just turn it down a little bit because, yeah, I want the realism of being in a car, sure. I really just want to believe that I'm in a car. So for me, I don't feel like I need physically to be, you know, tested and stressed for braking, for steering. Driving a sim car, I just need to be not thinking that it's a video game and able to just focus on what's going on in the simulation. So those are my settings for now. I can't kind of keep them like this all the time unless I need to really practice for something. If I'm going to drive an LMP3 car or an LMP2 car or something like that, then I would come in the sim and I would ramp up the max force here. I might even change the polymers in my brake pedal just to reduce the amount that the brake pedal travels. These polymers right here, maybe we'll go for some harder ones so that the pedal doesn't move as much. That doesn't change the firmness, or it doesn't change the strength of the pedal. It just changes how much the pedal travels. This is your magic number for changing how hard you ultimately are going to have to brake. I have a little curve here just because it allows me a little bit easier to consistently hit the brakes, just because in real life I don't really have an issue of braking hard or consistently braking. So for the sim, I kind of make it a little bit easy for myself by having this plateau, and it just means that consistently you can see the green bar of what iRacing sees. Even though my brake pressure varies a bit, I'm still in the range of being, you know, right below the threshold of ABS. So that's me. And that's it. I think that's everything we need to cover. Um, yeah, thanks very much for watching.